everyone. I'm Daniel Roth, Principal Product Manager for Blazor on the .NET team. In this session, we're going to look at how Blazor enables modern full-stack web development using the trusted .NET platform. We'll also look at what the future holds for Blazor in the upcoming .NET 9 release. Blazor is a web UI framework for building modern full-stack web apps. Instead of having to combine multiple different web UI technologies to build a web app, Blazor provides a cohesive, component-based framework for handling all of your web UI needs. These days, effective web UI development involves both the server and the client. On the server, you can handle requests by accessing server resources like data and backend services to generate HTML responses. On the client, you can handle user interactions using client resources like local storage and local location data to dynamically update the UI. As a full-stack web UI framework, Blazor can handle all of these scenarios using a consistent component-based programming model. When running from the server, Blazor components can render HTML in response to requests using data and backend services that are available in the server environment. Those same components can also run on the client from a web browser to handle user interactions, access client resources, and seamlessly update the UI. With Blazor and .NET 8, you have full flexibility in how you architect your web app. And by using one language, one framework, and one build system, all integrated with .NET, Blazor helps you build awesome web apps faster and with greater productivity. Let me show you how easy it is to get started building web apps with Blazor and get productive fast. Okay, here I have the latest version of Visual Studio, version 17.10. And let's go ahead and create a new Blazor web app using the Blazor web app template. We'll use the default project name, and we're going to use .NET 8, the latest .NET long-term support release. Go ahead and create that. And there's our new Blazor web app project. We'll go ahead and run it to get it started. All right, so here's our Blazor web app, and you can see we have a few pages. We have the home page with just some static content. We've got this counter page with a button that we can click, and the count goes up. So we've got some interactivity now on this page. And then we have the weather forecast page, which is just displaying a list of completely fabricated weather forecast data. All right, let's snap this side by side with Visual Studio. And here on the home page, let's play around with the developer experience. Let's open up home.razor, which has the code for this page. And we can change some of the text. Let's say, hello, Microsoft build. Click the hot reload button to see those changes live in the browser. It looks great. We can also add some components, like maybe we add another counter component right here on the home page. We'll go ahead and, oops, meant to hot reload that, but that's fine. There it shows up. And then maybe we add a weather forecast table here as well. We can add them all, hot reload that, and it shows up as well. All right, cool. So we can quickly build up our application using multiple components. Now, what I really want to do here is connect this app to some data. I want to be able to store a list of movies in a database and be able to add them and edit them, delete them, and so forth. So let's change the title of this app to be My Movies App. We'll go ahead and hot reload that. There it goes, looks great. And I need a model type for representing my movie. So I'm going to add a new class, or actually an existing class to this project I've already got set up. Let me go here and just pull up this movie class. And this is pretty simple. I'll show you the code. It's just got an ID, title, release date, genre, and then price. And then we're using some data annotations to say that the title should be required and that the price should be positive and less than $100. Okay. Now, to create some pages based off of this movie class, I want to just scaffold them. I'm going to let Visual Studio do all the hard work for me. So I'm going to go to my pages folder and just say add scaffolded item, just like that. And here I'm going to select Razor components, and I'm going to use the Razor components using Entity Framework CRUD scaffolder. What will this do? Well, CRUD means create, read, update, delete. So this gives me the option to generate pages for all those scenarios, listing all my movies, creating new movies, or if I just select CRUD, it will create all of those template pages. And now I can select my data model. There's the movie, and I need a DB context class to actually interact with the database. I don't have one, so I'll let the scaffolder create one for me. I can then pick which database provider I want to use. I'll use the default, which is SQL Server. And then we'll let Visual Studio do all the hard work. It's going to inspect my movie data model and then generate all of those pages for me. And there it goes. Okay, and now we've got this movie pages folder in our solution. Let's go ahead and right there, we'll zoom in. So we've got our create, delete, details, edit, and index pages. If we look at the index page, we now have this quick grid component to display all of our movies. Quick Grid is a built-in data grid component in Blazor that can display lots of data and then add all sorts of interactive features like sorting, paging, and filtering. So that's nice. And then in create.razor, we have a form for adding movies to our database, and we can see that it's already set up to do validation on all of our movie properties. Similar form in the edit page, and then details and delete for just displaying and deleting individual movies. So nice. Now, in order to run this, I actually now have to set up the database first. I have to set up the movie schema in the database. And I can do that using Visual Studio by just double-clicking on this connected services node. And you can see Visual Studio already knows that I'm using SQL Server for my data store. If I click on this ... I'm going to add an Entity Framework core migration. I need to stop the app first for when I do this. What this is going to do is the migration keeps track of all the changes that I'm making to my data schema and allows me to apply them to the actual database. So it's found my DB context, and I just need to give this a name. Let's call it initial. That's my initial migration. So we'll go ahead and run that. That will generate the migration code. Usually just takes a second. So here now in this migration folder, you can see the migration code was generated. And now there's a second step. I need to actually apply that migration to the database by running update database. So again, this will find my DB context and all my migrations so that I can then run them. So it's retrieving the migrations for that DB context class. And if I click finish, it will then update the database for me. Perfect. Okay. So now we should be able to run our app. See those changes? Good. Okay, so here's our application. Now I don't see my movies yet, but if I browse to /movies, then I should see my movie pages. There they are. So here's my empty list of movies, and I can create a new movie. Let's add E.T. I think that was June 11th, 1982. I don't know, sci-fi, and we'll give it a random price. And there, now our movie is showing up in our data grid table. Perfect. That was really fast. Now, I do want these movie pages to show up in my layout. So let's go back to our code and find the main layout for our application. You can see it's using this nav menu component for displaying all the nav links. I'm just going to copy this last one, and we'll add it right before the counter. We'll add it right here. And this will browse to /movies. And then the text will be movies. Perfect. So we can just hot reload that into the application. And there we can see our new movie tab. So we can browse to our movies. Perfect. All right. Now I want to do a little cleanup here. Like right now, this release date column is just using the property name from my movie class. I'd like that to have a space in it. So let's go back to index.razor. So what this quick grid component is doing is for each of the properties in my movie, it's setting up these property columns. And I can change the title that displays by adding this title attribute. Let's add release date. That looks good. We'll hot reload that, and that should show up. There, now we got a space, so that looks much, much better. Now I also want to add some interactive features. Like I'd like to be able to sort my movies and filter them and have pagination. To show that, let's add one more movie so we have a little bit more data to work with. Ghostbusters. I think that was June 8th, 1984, and I don't know, let's call it a comedy, and give it another price. Okay, so I want to make this column sortable, the title column. So we can go into Quick Grid and set the sortable attribute right here, no problem. Now you'll see that the title column is selectable, but when I click on it, nothing happens yet. Why is that? Well, by default, Blazor will make my pages statically rendered. That means that you send a request to the server, it dispatches it to the appropriate component, which then renders HTML back to the browser, and then it's done. There's nothing set up to actually handle UI interactions. Now, we do have a page with UI interactions, which is this counter component, and you can click the button, the count goes up. How does that work? Well, if we look at the counter component code, we can see that it has been set up with an interactive server render mode. And that allows it to handle UI events from the browser, but do it from the server. This will actually send those UI events across the wire on a real-time network connection between the browser and the server. The components can handle that event and then render UI updates back down to the browser. So that's what we need. Let's just copy that and we'll put that in our movies page. There we go. And now we should be able to rerun this and get some interactivity. We've now set up our quick grid component for interactivity. All right, cool. So let's open this up again. And now if I go back to movies and click on the title component, now we can sort our titles. Awesome. All right, let's say we also want to have pagination. Like we want to have a little pagination widget on the bottom of our data grid. We can do that too. Let's add a paginator component to the bottom of the page. This is a built-in component. We can see we're getting a warning. It's saying that we actually need to add a state parameter. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, what type is this? It's got to be a pagination state. Okay, so let's add some C# code down below in this code block. And we want a new pagination state instance. We'll call it pagination state. We'll just new that up. And then I'm going to want to set this up with an initial value here for the number of items per page. This is going to be a little weird. I'm just going to say just one item per page. And that's because we only have 2 movies currently. But at least we'll show that pagination is working. And now we should be able to just take this and stick it into our state parameter. Awesome. Now this pagination state is how the paginator and the quick grid coordinate on which rows of the table to show. So we also need to pass it above to the quick grid component itself. Okay. So now if we rerun that and then bring up the application again, if we refresh this page, we can see that we now have 1 item per page, and we have a little pagination widget at the bottom that we can navigate between use to navigate between the different pages. Super awesome. Okay, great. So we're able to add pagination. Let me change this back to having more than just 1 item per page, because that's a little silly. And there, now we have 1 page with 2 items, up to 10 items. What if we want to do filtering? Can we do filtering? Yes, we can do filtering as well. To do filtering, I'm going to add a little UI widget to the title column. And we can do that by just adding some content to this property column. And in here, I'm going to add another component, which is this column options component. What does this do? This is going to add a little like hamburger menu widget that we can add some UI to when it's clicked. And you can add whatever HTML here we want. Let's add a div with just an input. And this is going to be of type search. And we'll also autofocus it so that the cursor is there and ready to go. And I want to bind this input to some code, to like a string variable that I have down here below in my code block. Let's call this the title filter. And we'll make that just an empty string by default. And now we can take our input and bind it to that title filter. Great. And actually, I want to bind it on a particular event. I want it to bind with every single keystroke. So I want it to bind on the on input event instead of just on change. Okay, so whatever's in this input should now be bound to my title filter. So we should be able to use that now to filter our movie results. So I'm going to set up an iQueryable. Copilot helping me out there. That's great. I'm going to actually call this filtered movies and set up a little helper property. That's perfect. I want to take my DB context and the movies and have a little query here that's going to filter the movie on the title based on our title filter. Okay, so now I should be able to just take this and substitute that in here for our items property, and that should now show filtered movies. All right, let's rerun. Okay, and now if we go here, we can see the little hamburger menu UI widgets showing up. And if I search for like ghost movies, we only see Ghostbusters. If I clear it out, we see all our movies again. And if I search for movies that I guess have a dot in their name, then we can see ET now shows up as well. So we're able to add filtering. So with just a few lines of code, we were able to add interactivity to our Blazor web app and add pagination, filtering, and sorting. That's pretty cool. Okay, but I'd also like to have more than just one movie list. Like I'd actually like to have multiple users, and they can each have their own movie list that they manage. How can I do that? Well, now I need to set up authentication in my Blazor web app. Can I do that too? Yes, we can. Okay, so let's close this down, and let's right click on the Blazor project, and we're going to again use scaffolding. We're going to add a new scaffolded item, and we're going to this time select this identity node and pick the Blazor identity scaffolder. Okay, so let's add that. And this is going to set up authentication in our app that we can then customize and use for authenticating users. So I need to pick a DB context. I have one already, but it's not actually an identity DB context, so I can't use that one. So I'm just going to go ahead and create another one, and then I'll do a little bit of manual merging so that I just have one in the app. I don't want to have two. So we'll call this the identity context. We'll just create another one, and we'll merge it later. We'll continue to use SQL Server for our data store, and why not? Let's create a custom user class so that we can customize that and add additional properties and data to it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click Add, and this will now set up ASP.NET Core identity in our Blazor web app for us. Perfect. Okay, so now we have this new accounts folder that's in our components folder, and here we can see all the code that was scaffolded for us, all the pages that we can use for logging in users, registering new users, they're managing their account profile, and it's all implemented using Razor files, implemented in Blazor, so we can customize it however we'd like. All right, great. So I do want to clean up the DB context. So before I had this existing one, I'm just going to copy the DB set off of my existing DB context and put that in my new identity one. Okay, and then we can get rid of the old one. And let's make sure we've saved this. And then here we'll just rename this back to the name of the old one so that all the code lines up. Okay, and we'll let Visual Studio refactor that for us. And if I did that right, hopefully I should be able to build and everything is clean. Perfect. Okay. Now we've got identity set up. We need to actually apply the identity schema to our database. So let's go back to connected services and let's add another migration. So we can add the the identity schema. Let's make sure the app isn't running. And here we'll find our DB context. Good. And this time we'll call the migration add identity. That's great. Finish. So that will generate the migration code. There it goes. Okay, now we need to run those migrations. So we'll update the database. Again, it will find our DB context and locate all the migrations that are associated with it. And if we click finish, it will then apply those migrations to the database. So we'll have both our movie data and our identity schema as well. Okay, that's all done. All right, let's run this and see what we get. Okay, so here's our application. And now you can see we've got a couple of new tabs. We have this register tab that we can use to add users. Let me add a new user here. Let's make up a password that hopefully I won't forget. And do that. We'll register that user. Great. And here it's asking me to confirm the email for my new user account. During development, you can just click this link. When you actually deploy the app, you should set up a proper email service. And now we should have a user created in the database. So I should be able to log in. So let's log in with my new user. Password that hopefully I remember how to type. There it goes. And now I am logged in. And we can go to this user account profile page and see the email address and change my password and set up two-factor authentication, all the great features of ASP.NET Core Identity. Awesome. So now what I want to do is I want to make it so that when I browse to the movies page that you have to be logged in order to see that. So let's go ahead and do that. Close down the app. And what I'm going to do is in the movies page, where is that? In the pages folder, movie pages, I'm just going to click, type Control-Shift-A to add a new item. It's a nice little shortcut. I'm going to add imports.razor right here. This is a special Razor file in Blazor that basically adds some code to all of the Razor files in a given directory and all the subdirectories. And all I want to add here is an attribute. I want to add the authorize attribute to all these pages. I think I need to resolve the namespace. Yeah, there we go. So that all my movie pages now require you to be logged in order to see them. So let's get this running one more time. Okay, and now that that's running, if we log out, okay, so now I'm logged out. If I try to browse to, I'm going to try and click on the movies tab, and I get immediately jumped over to the login page. That's because it now requires authentication. You need to be logged in to see that page. And so if I log in again, there we go. and I get jumped right back over to the movies page. I can now see my movies. And now I can go into my code and actually associate those movies with individual users and make sure that, you only display the movies for a particular user, only allow them to edit the movies that they actually own. So that's how easy it is to get started with Blazor, to create a new Blazor web app, to connect to data and create pages that display and edit data, to add interactive features to your Blazor web app, and then also secure your Blazor web app with authentication. Now, a really cool example of a production Blazor web app is the new .NET Aspire dashboard. .NET Aspire is a new framework for building distributed cloud-ready apps, including cloud-ready Blazor apps. The .NET Aspire dashboard gives you fingertip access to various aspects of your app during development, including logs and traces and environment configurations. The .NET Aspire team was able to build this dashboard quickly and efficiently using Blazor, along with the 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗍 Blazor components, a free open source Blazor component library from Microsoft. You can learn more about .NET Aspire at aka.ms/.net/aspire and the 𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗍 Blazor components at aka.ms/blazor/𝗦𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗀. Here's a full list of all of the Blazor features in .NET 8, including the new advanced render modes, additional framework enhancements, and WebAssembly improvements. If you haven't yet tried out Blazor in .NET 8, I encourage you to do so. You can get started with Blazor by going to the Blazor homepage at blazor.net. Okay, so what's next for Blazor? .NET 8 was a pretty ambitious release for Blazor, in which we introduced many new features and capabilities. In .NET 9, we're going to take some time to focus on the quality of those features and improving the developer experience when using them. We're going to prioritize quality and fundamentals, including work on performance, security, and observability. We'll also do work to smooth out the user experience with Blazor web apps by filling in gaps and ensuring that all the new features work seamlessly together. We plan to make some targeted improvements to Blazor Server and interactive server rendering to improve performance and also address some common user experience issues. We'll continue to invest in Blazor WebAssembly and our support for static web assets to optimize page load time and startup time. We'll also invest in Blazor's component model and tooling to improve the overall Blazor developer experience. Let's go through each of these areas in some more detail. Based on feedback from .NET 8, we know that there are some areas where Blazor web apps could still use some improvements. Performance is a big part of everything we do in .NET. We didn't get to do all of the performance work we wanted to on static server-side rendering in Blazor in .NET 8, so we've allocated time in .NET 9 to do that. We plan to make it possible in .NET 9 to statically render a page when you're in an interactive context. This is useful for when you've set up your Blazor web app to be globally interactive, where you've said, I want everything to support interactive features, but then you decide, oh, wait, except for maybe just this page, or maybe just this area of the application that you just want to render statically. We plan to add APIs so you can detect the current render mode and adjust your component rendering logic accordingly. For example, you might want to render interactive UI elements as disabled when pre-rendering. Or you might want to render completely different UI elements when interactivity isn't available. We're also expecting to make improvements to how you persist component state on the server and transfer it to the client. Blazor already has APIs for doing this, but we have some work to do to make them work well with enhanced navigation. We also want to introduce a declarative model for persisting component state so that the feature is just easier to use. The Blazor web app template currently doesn't provide an option for using Microsoft Entra for authentication, so you kind of have to set that up manually. We're working with the Microsoft Entra team to add that template option, as well as tooling in Visual Studio for adding Entra-based authentication to existing apps. For apps that use interactive server rendering or Blazor Server, we've already done some work in .NET 9 to improve performance by compressing the WebSocket traffic. In our tests, we're seeing that compression can cut the message payload sizes in roughly in half, which should help reduce UI latency. This improvement is already available with the latest .NET 9 previews and is enabled by default. We have some work to do to improve distributed tracing for Blazor Server, so it doesn't just show up, your Blazor Server app doesn't just show up as a single long-lived request. We're going to add additional trace activities so you can get more visibility into the behavior of your Blazor Server apps. And we plan to improve Blazor Server, the Blazor Server reconnection user experience so that it's smoother and less jarring for your end users. Let me show you some early thinking on what that improved reconnection experience might look like. Okay, so let's go over here and I'm going to open up a different project, which is this stateful reconnection prototype. And I'm actually going to run this from, I think I have my other apps already. Let's close that one. Okay, I'm actually going to run this app from the command line so that we can see how it behaves when the server is restarted without Visual Studio automatically refreshing the browser for me. Okay, so I'm going to do .NET run. There it goes. And let's go ahead and open this up and see what it looks like in the browser. Okay, so this is a Blazor Server app, and this is going to behave as Blazor Server behaves today. Now we have a little form here that I can, click a counter and the counter goes up. So that's an interactive counter. I can add some data into this form. It doesn't really matter what. Just populate some things in here. This is a test. There we go. Okay, so imagine your users are using your Blazor Server app. You've got a big long form that's added a bunch of data to that form, and then something happens on the server that causes that data the server state to get lost. Like maybe you deployed an update to your app, and the server needs to recycle in order to apply that update. Or maybe the user lost their network connection, like they went into a tunnel or they swiped the app into the background. And then the server timed out the user state and decided, oh, maybe that server, that user is gone, and I should just dispose of their server state. We can simulate that happening here in local development by just shutting down the server. So I'm just going to shut down the server, and let's see what happens. Okay, well, first of all, we get, let's make this big. We get the built-in Blazor Server reconnection UI experience, the infamous reconnection UI. So what's happening here is Blazor Server is trying to reconnect back to server. It sees that it's lost the connection, and it's trying repeatedly to resume the application so that the user can keep doing what they were doing. So it's trying to reconnect. Now the server's not up yet, so let's go ahead and bring the server back up and see what happens. Okay, so the server's now up, but nothing's happening yet. It's taking a little while to reconnect. Why is that? Well, that's because the default reconnection interval in Blazor Server is actually pretty long. It's like 20 seconds. So the user sits here waiting, even though the server's already up and running. And there it goes. There. Now it's noticed that the server is up and running, and it's tried to reconnect back to the user's state. But then it notices, wait, the state is gone. Like it was all just in memory, and the server got completely shut down. And sorry, user, it says it can't reconnect to the server. It can actually network-wise connect to the server, but it can't connect back to that user's state. And so it tells the user, hey, the only thing you can do now is refresh the browser. And the user has to do that manually, or you write your own code in your application to do that for the user. Okay, so let's say the user does that. They refresh the browser, and now the app is working, but man, all the things that I typed into that form are now gone, both the server state and anything that was actually in the form fields. So obviously that's not great. Can we do better? So if we go back to this app, we've got a little prototype of a new experience that we're looking at for .NET 9. I'm going to uncomment this stateful reconnection component, and then let's shut down the app, and let's go ahead and restart it and see what this looks like. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, so here now we have the app with the new and improved features. Let's add some test data again. So test 2 and fill out this checkbox. Sure, doesn't really matter what this is. It's just to have some data to play with. This is a test. There we go. Okay, so now what happens if we shut down the server with the new prototype? Okay, we've got a new UI, a new UX experience for the user. Slightly nicer, a little less jarring. It's not like a full screen overlay. Looks a little more reasonable. If we bring the server back up, let's see how long that takes. Okay, the server is up, and almost immediately the app reconnects. That's because we've shortened the reconnection time to just 1 second. So it's very quickly checking to see if the server is available. And you notice that even though the user's server state was lost because we recycled the server, the browser automatically refreshed for the user. So the user didn't have to do that manually. You didn't have to add code to do that. And it even was able to preserve the data in the form fields. And it did that by persisting the state on the client, like in local storage. Now, it's not perfect. Like, we still lost the server state, like the click count, which was being stored on the server. So that's still an issue that you have to solve in your own application when you want to persist server state and how you want to rehydrate it. That is something that we do want to make better in a future .NET release, not planned for .NET 9. But at least with the other improvements, you get a much better UI for reconnection. It reconnects much faster. It automatically refreshes the browser, and at least the form field data is being preserved. So this is not we haven't finalized that this is exactly what the experience is going to be for .NET 9, but hopefully this gives you an idea of some of the improvements that we are looking at. Now, we're also working on various improvements to optimize page load and startup time. We're going to start pre-compressing any uncompressed static web assets in your app, not just the Blazor ones. We already do pre-compression on Blazor WebAssembly-based apps when you publish. In .NET 9, we're going to look at doing that for pretty much any static web asset that could benefit from that, like your CSS files or your JavaScript files. This will reduce the size of your app so that it can be downloaded faster. We're looking to switch to use some more modern bundling techniques for the Blazor JavaScript framework assets. This is like blazor.web.js and blazor.webassembly.js, so that they are smaller and we get some nice size wins out of that too. We also plan to start fingerprinting your static web assets at build time with a hash of their content to prevent stale cached versions from being used. In places where we generate references to those static web assets, we'll automatically use that fingerprinted file name. For references in your user code, we'll provide APIs for mapping the asset names to the fingerprinted names. And this will allow us to configure the fingerprinted files to be aggressively cached. For places where the fingerprinted file name isn't referenced, we'll also set up the content hash as the E tag, which will force browsers to check for and download newer versions. We're planning to look at preloading static web assets using generated link tags where appropriate, so that all the needed assets can be fetched at once instead of having to wait for a waterfall of requests. And we're also doing work to optimize the startup time of the .NET WebAssembly runtime and the Blazor initialization logic so that your app starts faster even when it's already been downloaded and cached. Finally, to improve the general Blazor developer experience, we've already added support for constructor injection to Blazor components, in addition to the existing @inject property injection support. This allows you to optionally inject services and helps Blazor work better with null state checking. We're planning to continue the work we started in .NET 8 to add OpenTelemetry-based metrics to ASP.NET Core by adding useful metrics to Blazor, like the number of active circuits and so on. We continue to do work to make hot reload better for Blazor by adding support for more edit types and improving performance and reliability. We're doing lots of work to improve the Razor editor so you get better editing performance, reliability, and correctness. And for you Blazor hybrid users out there, we plan to add a new Blazor Hybrid Plus Web template to make it easier to set up a solution that shares Blazor components between a Blazor web app and also native mobile and desktop clients built using .NET MAUI. So here's a full list, a summary of what we're hoping to deliver for Blazor in .NET 9. I hope you're as excited about these new features and improvements as we are. Please note that our plans can and often do change, but you can always see the latest updates to the ASP.NET Core and Blazor roadmap on GitHub at aka.ms/ASP.NET/roadmap. Now, one additional thing that I wanted to show you is some experimental work that we're doing to make it easy to build AI-powered Blazor web apps. Now, AI technologies are great, but learning how to add AI to your app can be pretty daunting. You need to learn about prompt engineering and all the different large language models. And then there's vector databases and RAG. Maybe you look at using semantic kernel in your app. And after you've figured all that out and potentially, completely redesigned your UI, what if no one ends up actually using it? That's a lot to take on. So what if instead you could just add some drop-in .NET Smart components that make it easy to add AI-enabled features for common scenarios? Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so let's go back to Visual Studio, close this, and I'm gonna bring up this .NET Smart Components application, and we'll go ahead and run that. Okay, so let's first imagine, let me bring up the browser over here. Let's first imagine that in your app, you have lots of forms that people need to fill out. Like maybe you have one for mail addresses or one for submitting bug reports. And often the data that people are filling into these forms, and maybe it's just coming in as like plain text, like in an email or off some social media thing. And now you have to parse that email and fill out the correct form fields for that bug report, or to get someone's address actually into the address form. That can be a little bit tedious, but what if you could just like copy the text from that email? Let's imagine this text came from an email, and you had this smart paste button that you could just add to your existing forms, and you just click that, and it reads from the clipboard and uses AI and large language models to parse that data and fill out the right form fields for you automatically. So it's already done, and create some nice repro steps for that bug issue. Really simple, really quick. And all you had to do to add that to your application was just add a component. You just add this like smart paste button to your existing form, and away you go. You configure it to use the appropriate OpenAI services. Super simple, super quick, easy to add AI value to your applications. Similarly for the mail address form, let's say we had like a mail address that we got from someone. Let's go ahead and smart paste that in after copying it, and boom, just automatically fills out all the forms using AI. Super cool. So that's smart paste. Another scenario, let's say you're working in HR, and you often have to respond to questions about HR policies, like what's the vacation balance for a normal employee, and so on. And that's a lot of details to keep track of when you're sending these responses. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of just having just a plain old text box, you could actually set up a smart text box, a smart text area that you can configure with a bunch of details and partially written responses to common questions that then the AI model can then use to help you suggest an appropriate response. So for example, let's say someone asked about the vacation balances. To learn more about vacation policy, there we go. So that's giving me a link that they can go and check. There's the vacation policy link. Full-time employees have a vacation balance of 28 days. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Thank you for your message. We appreciate and welcome your feedback on the system. Please fill out our survey and there's the survey link. So I didn't have to remember any of these URLs, didn't have to remember any of the details about the vacation balance. Super awesome. So you get intelligent suggestions from the AI system using a smart text area. All right, last scenario. Let's say you have like lists that your users need to pick from, and long lists, lots of them that are in combo boxes. And yeah, you can search through them using like substring searches, but sometimes it's not obvious which item to select, like in an expense category or an issue label. Like maybe you want an expense for an airplane ticket and you don't know what to pick for the category. Wouldn't it be nice if you could do semantic search over the options? Like I type in airplane ticket, and it just automatically knows, oh, that's probably something related to travel. Or maybe I type in cat, and it's like, oh, well, maybe you're trying to do something related to pet care. On issues, like maybe it's a mobile-related issue, but you're not sure what I'm supposed to put for that, and there's a bunch of mobile-related platform labels that you can use. Or maybe it was a desktop issue, and all the desktop labels pop to the top. So you get semantic search over long lists of items using either a cloud-based AI model or even potentially a local one. So that's Smart Combo Box. So these are all the .NET Smart Components are available for you to try out today. You can find them at aka.ms/.NET/Smart Components. The components currently are experimental, but that just means that we're very interested in your feedback on how we can make them as useful as possible. Currently, there are sample components for Blazor, as well as for MVC and Razor Pages. Let us know if you're interested in support for other .NET UI frameworks as well. Okay, so thank you for watching and learning how Blazor can help you build your next great web app. If you haven't already tried Blazor in .NET 8, please do so by going to blazor.net. We also invite you to try out the latest Blazor improvements and enhancements in .NET 9 by going to dot.net/next. And we'd love for you to try out the new .NET Smart Components. Give them a try. You can find them at aka.ms/.net/smartcomponents. Thanks again, and happy Blazoring.